The show opens at midnight in the Link Technology office in Suzhou. There, we see the general manager Joe rehearsing his speech about promoting their new dating app called Love Note. She pauses when she reaches the line, "Nobody understands love better than we do." She then reflects on why people need relationships and how difficult falling in love can be. At this moment, her phone plays a birthday tune, as it turns out to be her 30th birthday today. This makes Joe a bit upset, so she lies down on the couch and ponders why she can't fall in love. The scene then shifts to the next morning when Gu Jiaxin, a motorcycle racer, rushes to the office on his bike. As soon as he arrives, he asks for Zhao. The employee informs him that she's currently out, so he goes to her office to wait. Meanwhile, in the Love Note department, there's a buzz of activity as Zhao and the staff prepare for a live broadcast. Just then, Qian Jingjing, a famous relationship blogger, arrives in a grand manner. We learn that she and Zhao are best friends, and she's going to be the face of Love Note because her blogs are popular among young women. She's brought Zhao a birthday gift, which turns out to be a collection of photos of male models. Before formally beginning the broadcast, they chat about Zhao's preferences for men and her former boss, Mr. Xu, whom she had feelings for. In the next scene, Zhao returns to her office and talks to herself in the mirror. She practices meeting Mr. Xu in case she meets up with him at an upcoming event. But she fails to see Jiaxin waiting for her as he coincidentally bends under the table to retrieve his earpods. We then learn that Jiaxin is the son of Link Tech's CEO, Miss Jin. He's been assigned to be Zhao's assistant to learn the ropes of the business, but he clearly doesn't want to be here. Moreover, he makes an unfavorable start by offering to help Zhao secure her position as general manager in exchange for her turning a blind eye to his lack of work. Our heroine is insulted by the offer, so she refuses it immediately. Soon after, the live show begins and everyone gets to work. Jiaxin cheekily writes a comment on the live chat asking why Zhao is single if she's promoting the dating app. This sparks the typical online uproar, but our heroine manages to calm them down by saying that she'll find love using the same app within 3 months. After a while, Jiaxin causes more trouble when he accidentally disconnects the power, ending the broadcast abruptly. This pisses Zhao off and she drags him into the meeting room and chews him a new one, while the office gossip gang eavesdrops on them. As punishment, Jiaxin is made to stay late at the office that night. He then plays a silly prank by pretending to be a ghost, but Zhao isn't scared at all. She tells him that he will only be dismissed from the company when he puts the effort in. Hearing this, our hero finally realizes that he's not going to get away with that shit with her. Once back at his apartment, Jiaxin receives a cake from a delivery person. At this point, he's so hungry he doesn't think much of it and starts eating it messily. However, he soon finds a note in it addressed to someone else. Apparently, the cake was meant for apartment 1201, not his number 1301. So he plans to apologize to the neighbor later and continues eating. Once he's had his fill, he heads to 1201 and rings the bell. To his utmost shock, he learns that the neighbor is none other than Zhao. Our heroine is also surprised to see him, but she's even more pissed at the fact that he ruined her birthday cake. In his defense, Jiaxin explains there was a mix-up in the delivery and he thought the cake was a gift from his fans. Annoyed, Zhao just asks him to leave so she can eat her instant noodles. Jiaxin feels guilty for his actions, so he decides to prepare her a makeshift birthday treat with what she has in her apartment. He then writes happy birthday in ketchup and sings a beautiful song for her. Zhao finds the gesture cute and her mood instantly changes. Once back in his own apartment, Jiaxin complains about having 2 female devils in his life, his mom and Zhao. That night, he has a terrible nightmare which causes him to awaken in a cold sweat. He dreams about a racetrack where a motorbike crashes into another one that is already on the ground. The following day at the office, Zhao remembers that she had vowed to find a boyfriend within 3 months, so she schedules a meeting with a matchmaker. When she visits, she's told that it's challenging to find a match for her at 30, as most men prefer younger women. Zhao is amused because they're acting as if she's about to die. They also say that her profile is difficult due to her high salary and work-centric life. At the same time, Jiaxin arrives there because he's been doing recon on the matchmakers in the city. While there, he's asked to fill out an application due to the lack of male members. While there, he overhears advice given to Zhao to reduce her salary and add hobbies like cooking to her profile. The staff doubts they'll ever find a match for her. Our hero feels bad for Zhao, so he deliberately aligns his profile with her likes, causing them to match instantly. The staff then introduce them to each other, unaware that they actually work at the same company. Later, the two go out and have a private conversation. Zhao questions Jiaxin about the matchup, and he admits that he didn't want her to feel bad about not finding any matches. She then wonders why men prefer women who aren't accomplished. Jiaxin explains its bias and says a good relationship should be about mutual support and growth. This statement inspires Zhao, and she decides to organize an elite singles night for outstanding individuals of both genders. Once they return to the office, she has Jiaxin, who is now her official assistant, create a dating questionnaire applet. He claims to be unsure how to do it, but she tells him to learn. Later, while Zhao is away, our hero contacts a senior at another tech company for a questionnaire template. He is completely unaware of potential issues with corporate intellectual property. In the next scene, Joshin visits the hospital where his injured friend Kong is admitted. Turns out he had a nightmare about Kong's motorcycle accident the other night. There, he also meets his mom, Miss Jin, and her assistant, who is currently taking care of Kong's medical bills. The two discuss company matters, but they soon end up arguing because of their differences in opinions. It's revealed that Joshin recently joined the company as an assistant in exchange for his mom's arranging the best surgeon for Kong's operation. We also learn that he feels guilty for his friend's accident, suggesting that he might somehow be responsible. Later, he talks with an unconscious Kong, promising to race together again, and venting about his mom's control. He vows to win a racing championship on his behalf within the next 3 months. The next day, he's at the office planning to meet his friends when Zhao asks him about the applet. He quickly shows her the completed work, greatly impressing her. Later at the club, he complains about Zhao to his friends. Meanwhile, our heroine discovers that their rival company released a questionnaire applet identical to the one Jiaoshin supposedly worked on. She tries calling him, but he ignores her, so she tracks him down at the club and scolds him in front of everyone. Following this, Jiaoshin goes to the office, apologizes to his colleagues, and offers to help rework the content. They end up working overnight to fix the applet. Once the work is complete, Zhao is impressed with the result and realizes he isn't so bad after all. That evening, Joshin brings dinner to Zhao as an apology. She looks tempted by the food, but when he claims to have cooked it all by himself, she finds a takeout receipt under one of the plates. Later, as she goes to wash her hands, her tap suddenly starts gushing water uncontrollably. She tries to fix it, but it gets worse and causes a mess in the kitchen. Fortunately, our hero comes over and fixes the tap with his impressive plumbing skills. Jiaoshin then awkwardly comments that Zhao is pretty, but lacks femininity, which understandably annoys her. He then asks about her plan to find a boyfriend, and she mentions the elite singles night. However, he's doubtful that she'll find a match there, which annoys her even further. At the event, Zhao wears a beautiful dress while Jiaoshin wears a suit. They then bet on who will receive the most roses from potential dates. During the event, our handsome hero charms almost all the girls, while Zhao's direct approach scares her dates off. By the end of the day, Jiaoshin has lots of roses, but she only has one, her own. Just when she's about to lose hope, she gets a message from Mr. Shu, who's also present at the event. He appears right in front of her and engages her in conversation. He then romantically offers to drive her home, but surprisingly, she refuses. Jiaoshin tries to persuade her to accept the offer, but to no avail. Zhao returns to her apartment and reflects on her feelings for Mr. Shu. In a flashback, we see that Zhao found some photos of another woman on his phone. She believed the girl to be his girlfriend, which ultimately broke her heart. Since then, she's been focusing on her work and career. The next day, Jiaoshin decides to help Zhao with her dating life. First, he tries to get information from her niece Duoshi, who works at the same company. The latter assumes he's interested in Zhao and supports them as a couple. However, Jiaoshin clarifies his intentions and says he's only trying to help. He then learns about Zhao's past, including her fear of being a substitute for Mr. Shu's deceased girlfriend. Later that evening, Zhao opens her door for a delivery, but it turns out to be Jiaoshin. He asks her to go out on a fake date with him to reignite her quote-unquote love nerves. He offers to take her to her old high school so she can once again experience the feeling of young love. Our heroine is skeptical about the idea, but he assures her that she won't regret it. He then hands her a box containing a high school uniform before departing. The next day, Zhao reluctantly wears the uniform, and Jiaoshin joins her wearing a similar outfit. Although embarrassed, she agrees to go along with his plan to remind her of young love, even though she's never dated anyone. Our hero then guides her to hold him, taking her by surprise. When they arrive at her old high school, Zhao feels anxious and wants to stop, but Jiaoshin suggests using the adrenaline rush to her advantage. They walk around the school, and he explains that many mistake a rapid heartbeat for love. He then suggests that they try high adrenaline activities on their date. While strolling around, they find graffiti love notes, including one from a boy who had a crush on Zhao in school. Jiaoshin scratches out the message and writes his own declaration of love for her, making her cringe. Our hero then grabs her hand and leads her to the rooftop where he dramatically declares his affection for her. This shocks Zhao, and as she tries to stop him, the security guards start chasing after them. The two then begin running holding hands and hide behind the bushes until it's safe to come out. Once they're alone, Jiaoshin asks Zhao if she felt anything during their adventure. She says that it just reminded her of her school days, and now she's even more determined to focus on her work. Jiaoshin is disappointed that his plan didn't work, so the two head back to their apartments. In the next scene, Jiaoshin's friend Ki-hong returns returns to China and reveals that he's back for someone. He's planning to stay with Joshin for now until he finds a new place to settle into. Coincidentally, the next day, Joshin helps out his colleague Duoshi, who needs a new housemate as her current one has moved out. He suggests she list her place online, which she does. A little while later, Ki-hung responds to her social media ad and meets her at the location. As they chat, they surprisingly realize that they had a crush on each other in middle school. Ki-hung then becomes Duoshi's new housemate, revealing that he returned to the country mainly for her. The scene then cuts to Zhao attending a colleague's wedding. She sees Mr. Xu there, but hesitates to approach him when his date arrives. Her friends then ask how the challenge to find a boyfriend within 3 months is going. When they start pressuring her, Zhao blatantly lies that she already has one. She then texts Jiaxin, asking him to pretend to be her boyfriend for a few months. Our hero happily agrees, but on the condition that he gets a day off every week. Zhao is totally against this rule, but she has no choice but to accept his demands. A little while later, Mr. Xu notices Zhao drinking and getting a little sloppy, so he approaches her with concern. She callously asks him about his girlfriend, but he chooses not to answer. Feeling tipsy, Zhao nearly trips on the floor. Just when Mr. Xu is about to grab her arm, Jiaxin hastily arrives at the scene and catches her from falling, and then quickly guides her out of the venue. Back at her place, a drunk Zhao starts acting silly. She then insists that Jiaxin join her for a drink, and the two end up getting drunk. Our heroine soon becomes emotional and begins admitting her struggles with love. She eventually leans on his shoulder and cries quietly. The next morning, Zhao wakes up to find herself in bed with Jiaxin, but thankfully, nothing happened between them. When she goes to freshen up, she discovers that he drew cat whiskers on her face with lipstick, so she chases him out of her apartment. Later, Jiaxin visits his comatose friend Kong and reminisces about their past. He then talks about Zhao, acknowledging her fierceness, but also finding her silly and even cute when she cries. Jiaxin then realizes he's developed feelings for her, but quickly dismisses the thought, citing the age difference between them and the fact that she's not his type. In the meantime, Duoshi and Ki-hung enjoy their lunch together, reminiscing about their school days. She recalls his stuttering and how she helped him overcome it. At Lingtech, Miss Jin meets with Zhao and hands her a potential client's file. When asked about her son's progress, Zhao provides positive feedback and says he's doing great. However, her mood instantly changes when Miss Jin reveals that Jiaxin's girlfriend is returning from abroad. She's annoyed with the fact that she cares about Jiaxin and his relationship status. When she returns to her office, she abruptly hands him the client file. Adding to her grumpy mood, the client turns out to be none other than Mr. Xu. Later that evening, Zhao and her best friend Jingjing discuss the situation at her apartment. She says she doesn't really know how to approach a handsome man. In response, Jingjing encourages her to take a more proactive approach with Mr. Xu, and then snatches her phone and sends a text to him, casually inviting him on a date. Mr. Xu promptly agrees, causing our heroine to panic hilariously. Meanwhile, Jiaxin is playing video games at his apartment when he receives a call from his supposed girlfriend, Yanran, whom he jokingly calls Clingy Girl. She wants to bring him a cake she baked and is already outside his building. Feeling a bit overwhelmed, he lies to her and says he's not home and hurries out. He goes straight to Zhao and asks if he can hide at her place for a while. Our heroine agrees, but she sets a time limit for his stay with the flip of a sand timer. Later, Yanran arrives and lets herself into Jiaxin's apartment using the security code she remembers from previous visits. She finds the apartment empty and realizes Jiaxin deliberately avoided her. This hurts her, but she decides to forgive him and plans a surprise for him. Meanwhile, Jiaxin watches from behind the curtains until Yanran leaves, ensuring it's safe to return. He then learns that Zhao has a date the next day, so he offers to help her prepare. He instructs her to imagine him as her and herself as Mr. Xu, simulating a scenario at a fancy restaurant. During the enactment, Jiaxin smoothly guides her through the exercise. Our heroine is visibly affected by his childish actions, but she chooses to ignore them. Jiaxin then says that planned but casual touches can increase someone's heartbeat and make them weak in the knees. He then subtly touches her earlobe while pretending there's something in her hair and suggests she create opportunities like these to accidentally touch Mr. Xu. The next evening during her date, she attempts to implement the suggestions, but no matter how hard she tries, she fails to casually touch his face. The date also becomes awkward as they struggle to find common ground. Zhao then attempts to initiate conversation about work-related matters. However, he suggests they avoid work topics, creating an awkward silence between the two. Following their failed date, Mr. Xu drives Zhao home in his fancy car. They don't talk much and just stare at the road in front of them. Before leaving, he clarifies that the girl she saw him with at the wedding wasn't his girlfriend. Zhao simply nods, as she doesn't know how to respond. The next day at LinkTech, Joshin excitedly asks her about her date. He wants to know whether his advice worked, but she responds vaguely, telling him not to worry about her romantic life. Later, Joshin is informed about a new employee joining the company, who turns out to be none other than the clingy girl, Yeonran. Worried, he meets her in private and asks her to keep his identity as the CEO's son a secret. She agrees, but only under the condition that he follows her instruction. Yeonran then suggests they have lunch, but Zhao suddenly interrupts them. She asks him to accompany her to visit a supplier, which he gladly agrees to. This annoys the clingy girl, and she starts wondering if Zhao is her romantic rival. After work, Joshin visits the hospital and learns that his friend Kong has undergone surgery, but still remains in a coma. The surgeon advises Kong's mother and Joshin to talk to him as much as possible. So Joshin updates his friend about Zhao, saying that most of his recent life updates revolve around her. He adds that he's currently confused about Zhao because he has promised to help her pursue Mr. Shu, but now he feels saddened by her dating him. This implies that our hero has started liking her. The next day, LinkTech is expected to discuss a potential partnership agreement with Mr. Shu's company. Joshin notices that Zhao has put more effort than usual into her appearance, wearing a new suit and lipstick. Our heroine feels unsettled by his observation and his sudden closeness when he unexpectedly takes her hand. However, he merely sprays perfume on her wrist, and Zhao reassures him that she's going to attend a meeting, not a date. In the meeting room, Mr. Shu encounters Yeonran, whom he remembers meeting for the first time in a cafe. She then confesses that she took the job to pursue her boyfriend, Joshin. Just then, our couple also enters the room and the meeting kicks off. Joshin presents a detailed analysis of the love app, highlighting its features and attributes, but only Zhao seems to be paying attention. It seems the other two are just here to catch a glimpse of their partner. Later, Joshin visits Zhao's office and says he'll be leaving early because he wants to catch a recently released movie. Surprisingly, she agrees and also mentions her dinner date with Mr. Shu. This instantly changes our hero's mood, but he leaves without saying anything. That evening, Zhao and Mr. Shu have dinner at a restaurant in the mall. Although he criticizes the food as common, Zhao doesn't seem bothered at all. Just then, he receives a work call and has to leave abruptly. This leaves our heroine alone, so she decides to watch a movie called Better Days, despite its depressing synopsis. Unbeknownst to her, she ends up in the same row as Joshin, but about 10 seats away. They only notice each other after the movie ends. As they exit the theater together, they're both surprised and flustered. They then talk about their movie preferences. He suggests she watch historical films, while she assumes he'd enjoy action-packed movies like The Fast and Furious. As they continue talking, Joshin notices Zhao's fascination with the skaters. He asks if she can skate, but she blatantly says no. Surprised, he admits that he can't either. He then suggests trying it out, and she reluctantly agrees to it. After this, Joshin holds her hand and leads her to the rink. At first, they wobble around on the ice and make complete fools of themselves, but soon they learn the basics and end up having a great time. The following day, Zhao is informed that an advertiser they typically work with might be pulling out of their contract, which is horrible news for their business. Amidst this intense situation, she suddenly remembers Mr. Wong, a director of another advertising firm, whom she can approach for a contract. She recalls that he enjoys golf, so she decides to approach him and talk business on the golf course. She then asks Mr. Shu to help her get a golf membership, which he happily does. In the next scene, Zhao tells Joshin about the golf meeting. The only problem is, she doesn't know how to play golf. He agrees to teach her by the end of the week, but in return, he wants to borrow her car so he can pick up his girlfriend Alice from the airport. Hearing this, Zhao is taken aback, but she eventually agrees to lend her car and accompany him to see his girlfriend. Much to her surprise, Joshin's girlfriend turns out to be his beloved racing bike. They then head to the golf course where she proves to be a diligent student as she follows his instructions closely. But despite her efforts, her swing misses the ball. When our hero steps in to adjust her stance, both feel the impact of their closeness. With his guidance, she eventually improves, and they share a happy moment when she smiles at him gratefully. The following day, Mr. Shu decides to be her golf teacher. He helps her with her stance and shows her various techniques to improve her shot. However, she doesn't seem to be nearly as comfortable with him as she was with Joshin. Zhao later encounters Mr. Wong on the golf course and grows an immediate disliking towards him. His comments about her appearance and age, along with his dismissive attitude towards her work-related discussion, enrages her. She becomes so distracted by his talk that she accidentally injures her wrist. Fortunately, Joshin arrives and offers to take over for her. He then speaks highly of Zhao's accomplishments as LinkTech's youngest general manager. He also talks about how their new dating app is going to take over the world soon. Surprisingly, Mr. Wong is impressed by the speech and decides to sign the contract with their company. Following this, Joshin finds a first aid kit and tends to Zhao's injured hand. Their conversation is interrupted by some nearby kids who are blowing bubbles. The bubbles soon form over Zhao, and Joshin can't help but stare at her. He blurts out that she looks beautiful, but she doesn't catch his words clearly. When she asks what he meant, he claims that he was simply referring to the bubbles. Later that night, Zhao takes him out for dinner as a thank you. During their chit-chat, she asks about his relationship with Yanran. Joshin reveals that the girl has been obsessed with him since childhood, and their families really want them to be engaged, which has made the relationship complicated. He then asks Zhao about her affair with Mr. Xu, but she brushes off the topic, insisting they focus on their delicious meal. As Valentine's Day approaches, LinkTech decides to launch the Love Note app on the same day. There's a special meeting with Miss Jin, and the team wonders if she'll be pleased with the project. To their relief, she absolutely loves it and gives her approval for the launch. At midnight, Joshin goes to Zhao's apartment and gives her a cute little cactus. She asks why he got it for her, to which he awkwardly explains it's for Valentine's Day. Unconvinced, Zhao presses for the real reason, and he admits that it's a token of gratitude for her support at work. This finally satisfies her, and she responds with a thank you. The following day, Zhao receives a new laptop as a gift from Mr. Xu. While she looks at it with a smile on her face, Yanran takes a picture of her and sends it to Mr. Xu. Turns out she's working for him as a secret informant. On Valentine's Day, the Love Note app is launched in a grandiose manner. It receives critical acclaim from the audience, and the launch is deemed a success. Later, as Zhao is cleaning up the event hall, Jiaxin suddenly approaches her. She asks why he's not with Yanran today, but he playfully dismisses any association between them. As the two continue talking, she accidentally injures her wrist again, so our hero immediately rushes her to a clinic. In the next scene, Zhao learns that she has a slight fracture in her wrist, which the doctor bandages and places in a splint. That evening, Jiaxin takes charge of the cooking for Zhao. She insists he put on an apron, and the pair eventually enjoy a pleasant meal together. A few days later, she's back at the office, still wearing a small bandage around her wrist. The cactus from Jiaxin sits on her desk, prompting her to ponder whether she has feelings for him or Mr. Xu. One rainy night, Zhao reaches her apartment but discovers that the elevator isn't working. She faces the challenge of climbing the stairs in heels, which injures her ankle. To make matters worse, she's forgotten her keys at the office. She then returns to the stairwell where she meets Jiaxin. Worried, he invites her to his apartment to dry off. He then gives her an oversized t-shirt to wear while he takes care of her injured ankle. Later, he unknowingly reveals his feelings to her while she pretends to be asleep. The following morning, Zhao wakes up to find Jiaxin gone, but discovers he's organized her belongings, left her water, and charged her phone before leaving. Downstairs, she calls a locksmith to change her locks and heads to her apartment. Jiaxin also heads over to her place with breakfast, but sadly, she's already left for the office. Later at work, Zhao announces a team-building activity at Tongli Ancient Town. She says that it will be an excellent opportunity to get to know each other, and Yanran volunteers to organize it. During the bus ride to Tongli, many passengers are dozing off, including Zhao and Jiaxin, who end up leaning on each other. The first day's activities start off with a pleasant boat ride. Throughout the journey, our protagonists exchange glances and smiles, while Yanran angrily notices them. Moments later, when Zhao stands up to take a photo, she accidentally falls into the water. Jiaxin immediately jumps in and rescues her. He then guides her to the dressing room and helps her dry off. At this moment, Mr. Xu arrives at the scene and invites Zhao to dinner, to which she agrees. Later, the team dresses up in Republic-era costumes for further activities. Yanran, noticing the closeness between her couple, persuades Mr. Xu to confess his feelings to Zhao. That evening, she cunningly pairs the two for a treasure hunt while she accompanies Jiaxin. But much to her disappointment, he manages to slip away from her. Elsewhere, our heroine gets bored of waiting for Mr. Xu, so she wanders off to buy some ice cream. This is where she bumps into Jiaxin. The two then buy lanterns from a kid and have a great time releasing them in the river. They also playfully make their own wishes. Zhao wishes for Jiaxin's eternal happiness, while he wishes for someone to always protect her. The pair then return to the hotel where they're staying for the night. Later, when Zhao is alone on the balcony, Mr. Xu presents her with a fresh ice cream. He reminds her of her promise to be in a relationship within 3 months and suggests that they're well suited for each other. Zhao laughs awkwardly, questioning if he doubts her ability to land a boyfriend. Mr. Xu then shows her an old sticky note with her handwriting. It's a farewell message she wrote to him on her last day of work. Turns out she used to work as an intern at his company before joining Link Tech. Zhao is touched by the gesture, and she realizes that he genuinely cares for her. Mr. Xu then takes the opportunity to finally confess his feelings for her, which he had suppressed for far too long. Unbeknownst to them, Jiaxin has overheard their entire conversation. As Zhao contemplates how to respond, the rest of the team arrives, eager for some fun. Mr. Xu appears annoyed by the interruption, and he subtly urges Zhao to consider his proposal. Later, the team engages in dancing and then transitions into playing Never Have I Ever. Zhao proves to be adept at the game, and she skillfully, one by one, gets everyone else drunk. A little while later, a completely wasted Jiaxin staggers off to the restroom. When Zhao follows to check on him, he asks about the conversation between her and Mr. Xu on the balcony. However, she ignores his question and helps him to his room. The team returns to the office the following day, and work resumes as usual. Meanwhile, the gossip gang gathers for tea and indulges in idle chatter. Some of the colleagues saw Zhao exit Jiaxin's room the other night, so they believe there must be something going on between them. When Yanran hears this, she storms into Zhao's office, accusing her of inappropriate behavior. But Jiaxin drags her outside and finally clarifies that he's just not into her. This breaks Yanran's heart, prompting her to leave the room in tears. Later that day, Jiaxin visits Kong at the hospital. As usual, he starts updating him about his life. He informs Kong of his intention to confess his feelings to Zhao. He then practices various confession methods to finally let her know that he loves her. The next day, he puts in long hours at work preparing a special presentation for Zhao. He invites her to the meeting room to review it, surprising her with a burst of balloons. His presentation, titled Confessions of Love, features old photographs of her corporate journey, each representing a significant stage of her life. He then confesses his feelings and proposes a relationship contract for her to sign if she reciprocates the same for him. Although moved, Zhao hesitates for a while and asks for some time to think about his proposal. Jiaxin obliges and leaves her office, but deep down, he's disappointed. Later, a conflicted Zhao turns to Jingjing for advice, as she's been proposed to by two men. The fact that both of them care for her genuinely has made it a tough choice for her. Jingjing then suggests that Zhao take her time and interact with both men, using a relationship scorecard provided by the Love Note app for evaluation. Our heroine finds the idea unorthodox, but she decides to give it a try anyway. The next day, Mr. Xu invites Zhao to go to a wedding with him, and she readily agreed. He also gives her a dress as a gift to wear to the event. That evening, Zhao is trying on the dress when Jiaxin unexpectedly arrives at her door. He compliments her and also gives her a pair of shoes he bought for her a while back. She wants to pay for them, but he says it's like a reward for teaching him the ropes at work. The scene then shifts to the wedding day, and it turns out that Jiaxin is also present. When he sees Mr. Xu and Zhao together, he tries his best to keep them apart. He even goes as far as to force himself into a photo with them. After the ceremony, Mr. Xu posts a photo with the caption, "Went to Mr. Hu's daughter's wedding." Jiaxin then posts a crop photo that shows only himself and Zhao, with the caption, "Went to the wedding with Miss Zhao." The next day at work, Chu-Chu, the leader of the gossip gang, sees both photos and tells the team that there looks like there's a love triangle going on. The team then starts betting on what will happen next. Later at night, Jiaxin unexpectedly gets into a motorcycle accident, but fortunately, he only ends up with a cast on his leg and a minor injury on his forehead. Upset by his recklessness, Mom takes away his beloved motorcycle. Aboard, Jiaxin then persuades a nurse to take some quote-unquote pity photos of him, which she posts online for Zhao to see. In the meantime, Mr. Xu takes Zhao to a farm that will be hosting an upcoming event. The farm is far from the city, and she only finds out about Jiaxin's accident when she's already there. Worried, she immediately contacts Duoshi and asks her to check on him. When Jiaxin learns that Zhao was with Mr. Xu, he leaves the hospital on crutches and somehow manages to get to the farm. He climbs over the fence to get inside, but sadly ends up in the chicken coop. At the same time, Mr. Xu is trying to catch a chicken when he suddenly falls upon Jiaxin. Zhao arrives at the scene to find the duo tangled in a complete mess. Following this, Mr. Xu and Jiaxin have a private confrontation. Determined to win Zhao's heart, Mr. Xu acts immaturely and declares war. Later, the two take Jiaxin back to the hospital. Yanran also arrives there, and she angrily confronts Zhao for not visiting him when he was injured. She further accuses our heroine of always prioritizing work and claims she's not the right person for Jiaxin. Zhao remains silent throughout, perhaps because she also believes that there's some truth to it. She then leaves the hospital, despite the boys urging her to stay. The next day, Zhao isn't feeling so well, but she has to meet with some people from an outsourcing company who canceled their app announcement. It seems like all her business partners and suppliers are acting up lately. In a meeting, these people pressure her to drink with them and then coerce her into joining them for karaoke. By this point, Zhao is feeling extremely unwell. Just when things seem overwhelming, Joshin shows up and rescues her. That night, Zhao feels feverish, but she's still thinking about work, so Jiaxin decides to help her out by looking at some documents. Unfortunately, he stumbles upon the relationship scorecards which she has kept to evaluate him and Mr. Xu. In the scorecards, he has been rated much lower than his rival, which is a swift kick in his pride. The following day when Zhao wakes up, she realizes that Jiaxin must have seen the scorecards. She anxiously meets him at the office and tries to explain, but he just won't listen. In a fit of rage, he says that she deserves to be alone. Later, Yanran is seen talking on the phone with Miss Jin. She is cleverly setting up a plan to remove Zhao from Jiaxin's life. That evening, Miss Jin invites our heroine for dinner and makes it clear that she disapproves of their relationship. However, her disapproval stems from the belief that Zhao is too good for her son, not the other way around. She genuinely thinks Zhao is an exceptional worker who might not be the best match for Jiaxin, especially considering his more frivolous nature. Our heroine is understandably upset by this, but she promises to focus solely on her work. The next day, the Love Note team hosts an event called the Breakup Museum, where items related to failed relationships are displayed. Jiaxin refuses to talk to Zhao and uses Duoshi as an intermediary, so our heroine does the same. Their stubbornness frustrates everyone except for Yanran, who seems pleased that they're still on bad terms. Later, we see that Zhao has submitted the cactus given by Jiaxin as an exhibit. When our hero sees the plant on display and reads the accompanying text about the language of the cacti symbolizing love until the end, he realizes how upset Zhao must be. Meanwhile, Jingjing is giving a talk about false breakups, which are arguments which threaten relationships. Zhao and Jiaxin are seated far apart, but as the talk progresses, they both realize they want to resolve their arguments and reconcile. As the event ends, only Zhao is left at the venue retrieving her cactus. Surprisingly, Jiaxin sneaks back into the museum for the same reason. Just as she's about to pick up the cactus, the lights go off. It startles her, causing her to drop the pot. While picking it up, she pricks her finger, and Jiaxin rushes over to help. In an oddly intimate way, he sucks the blood from her finger. They then get caught up in the moment and slowly lean in for a kiss, but sadly they're interrupted by a security guard. Later, Jiaxin visits Kong at the hospital and talks to him as usual. He reveals that he's decided to put his racing dream on hold to focus on work and be the mature, stable man that Zhao wants. The following day at work, Jiaxin is formally introduced as Miss Jin's son. The reason they haven't revealed his true identity is that his mother wanted him to learn the business firsthand. Jiaxin then pitches an idea for a love market event, which Zhao likes, but feels like it's still lacking some details. The group discusses further, and in the end, Miss Jin asks her son to lead the activity. She also assigns Yanran to help him with the planning. From the next day onwards, Jiaxin fully indulges himself at work, preparing for the much-anticipated love market event. The scene then cuts to the day of the event where a lot of people have gathered. Unfortunately, due to an accident, the scheduled singer didn't show up. As the team scrambles to find a replacement, Jiaxin steps up and begins to sing. His song is about love, and the flashbacks of key moments in Zhao and Jiaxin's relationship are shown as he performs on stage. The love market event continues, and Mr. Xu approaches Zhao to speak with her alone. When our hero notices them together, he's jealous, so he uses a commotion nearby as an excuse to interrupt them. The commotion turns out to be a physical fight between two women who were matched with the same man in the Love Note app. Yanran tries to intervene but ends up getting injured when she bangs her forehead against a pole. Mr. Xu then unexpectedly piggybacks her to the first aid tent. A little while later, Zhao finally stops the fighting by throwing water over the two women. She and Mr. Xu then have a private conversation, during which he asks about the answer to his proposal. Our heroine firmly apologizes, suggesting that she can't reciprocate his feelings. Despite this, she assures him that she still respects him as always. Mr. Xu gracefully accepts her response, and they decide to remain friends. After the love market event, Jiaxin announces that Miss Jin has arranged for the group to have dinner together. Zhao decides not to join, feeling a bit down after her conversation with Mr. Xu. Instead, she goes for a walk, and Jiaxin accompanies her. Although they don't talk much, they share an intimate silence, sometimes laughing and skipping along the way. In the meantime, in a hotel somewhere, Ms. Song, the former general manager at Link Tech, is going through the company's updates. She's furious that Zhao took over her position as general manager when she went on maternity leave, so she plans to make her suffer until she quits the company herself. The next day, news of Jingjing's divorce surfaces online. This is bad news for Link Tech and especially for Zhao because she is the brand ambassador of Love Note. Jingjing believes that her ex-husband Hao leaked the news to torture her, so she goes to confront him in his office, only to find that his company has gone bankrupt. What's more shocking is that apparently he staged the affair with the other woman and asked for a divorce to protect Jingjing from the bankruptcy repercussions. Dumbfounded, she decides to call her ex to find out exactly what's going on. In the meantime, Jiaxin and Zhao attempt to contact Jingjing but are unsuccessful. Link Tech is currently facing chaos with constant phone calls and online comments. The public is furious that the company had Jingjing as the ambassador to promote love and healthy relationships when she herself is going through a divorce. Soon after, a crisis management meeting is convened and Miss Song is also invited. Our hero is shocked to see her back, and it's evident he doesn't like her. The cunning bitch then announces that she'll be taking over the Love Note project from now on. Poor Zhao accepts the decision and pledges to identify the source of the leak. To make matters worse, Miss Song claims her office without consulting her. Jiaxin is outraged and wants to confront his mother. However, Zhao advises against it, recognizing the company's need for profitability and acknowledging her own wrongdoing. She then relocates to an empty desk in a shared workspace. Later, the two visit Hao's former company and discover that it went bankrupt and no longer exists. They also learn that Hao orchestrated an affair with someone else and divorced Jingjing so that she didn't have to go down with him. Following this revelation, Zhao confronts Hao, highlighting the emotional toll on her best friend. Meanwhile, Jingjing finds herself at an apartment her husband bought her earlier in their relationship. When Hao arrives, they finally reconcile and apologize to each other. Jingjing also decides to terminate her contract with Link Tech and take some time away from work to focus on her relationship. The following day during a meeting, Miss Song implies that Zhao secured her general manager position through a relationship with Jiaxin. This not only pisses her off, but also leaves her humiliated. Seeing her upset, Jiaxin defends her in front of everyone, takes her hand, and leads her out of the meeting room. Later, Zhao has a private meeting with Miss Jin where she talks about the declining popularity of Love Note. She feels that they're losing a lot of money for no reason. Our heroine takes responsibility for the situation and impulsively offers to resign. However, Miss Jin grants her an extended leave of absence instead of accepting the resignation. Following this, Zhao leaves the building reminiscing about the fun time she had with her team. However, her mood quickly shifts when Jiaxin comes running up to her. He surprises her by announcing that he's taking a leave of absence with her. She refuses to believe it at first, but then laughs in amazement. The following day, Zhao wakes up late and realizes she doesn't have to go to work. Although she wants to relax, she feels restless. Later, she starts planning her vacation activities in detail, but wherever she goes, Jiaxin seems to be there too, which is starting to bug her. He joins her at the gym, follows her on rainy walks, and even sneaks into her yoga class. That evening, Jiaxin goes to her apartment while she's out and tries to set up something on her balcony. Just then, he hears her returning home with her father, so he quickly hides behind the curtains. When she enters the apartment, she notices his shoes at the door and figures he must be behind the curtains, but she doesn't confront him at the moment. She instead hides the shoes and tries to keep her father from noticing anything strange. Dad then begins lecturing her about work issues, bringing up the past when he was overly critical of her achievements. He then gives her a gift. The object is pyramid-shaped, and he talks about life being like a pyramid where things get harder as you climb. Zhao isn't thrilled by the saying, as she's heard it many times before. Meanwhile, Jiaxin overhears the entire lecture and is shocked to realize their strained relationship. When he accidentally bumps his head and gets caught by Dad, he tries to pretend that he's a cleaner. However, Dad's not an idiot, and he reprimands our poor heroine before leaving. In the next scene, we see the two having a heart-to-heart conversation. She confesses that she's always worked hard to earn his acceptance, but he's never satisfied. He's always scolded her for even the smallest of mistakes she made. Zhao also reveals that when she was younger, she discovered that her father had a mistress, but she kept the secret hidden as to not upset her mother. In an attempt to cheer her up, he surprises her with a unicorn-shaped piñata on the balcony. Although initially she isn't interested, he encourages her to release her frustrations by smashing the piñata. Zhao takes his advice and ends up feeling better. Afterward, he feeds her a piece of candy which symbolizes good luck. He then gathers up the rest of the candy and tells Zhao that all the good luck is now hers. He explains that his earlier behavior was driven by concern for her well-being, fearing that she couldn't handle being alone. He concludes by telling her that she's already at the top of the pyramid in his heart. Zhao is moved by his words and appreciates his support and care. Later that evening, when she's alone, she reflects on his words and resolves to be brave. The next day, Jingjing invites Zhao over for a meal, but she kindly declines, claiming that she's going to see the cherry blossoms. At the cherry blossoms, she makes a wish for the Love Note team to overcome its current challenges. Jiaxin, as expected, follows her there because he's concerned for her well-being. As Zhao falls asleep under a cherry tree, he remains by her side. He promises to himself that she has his unwavering support and affection. When our heroine wakes up, she says that he's annoying for following her around and proceeds to leave for the next place on her list. But Jiaxin suggests they admire the cherry blossoms from a unique spot and suggests they go on a helicopter ride. Zhao is hesitant at first, but Jiaxin reveals that he's a pilot with a private license. They then board the chopper and enjoy the beautiful scenery from above. However, the chopper soon malfunctions, which leaves them both terrified. Zhao closes her eyes and fears it's the end for them. But thankfully, our hero follows the air traffic controller's instructions and safely lands the helicopter. As soon as they're out of the chopper, Zhao hugs him tightly and confesses her long-standing feelings for him. She admits she held back before because she couldn't see a clear future with him, but now she just wants to be with him and is willing to give their relationship a try. Elated, he embraces her in his arms and kisses her passionately. That night, our couple arrives at a hotel where, according to Jiaxin's instructions, the manager has prepared a romantic room. Zhao is undoubtedly impressed by the surprise. As she heads for the shower, Jiaxin tries to join her, but she playfully refuses. Later, Zhao gives him a box containing a heartfelt card expressing gratitude for teaching her to love. Inside the box are mementos from their past interactions, including tickets to events, a keychain from his confession, and even the marker she once playfully used to write "jerk" on his back. Jiaxin becomes emotional as he goes through the items, realizing how much Zhao cares for him. They then lie in bed for a while, exchanging smiles. He then asks her what she wished for during the cherry blossoms. He guesses that she wished to be with him, but she surprises him by saying that she doesn't need to wish for that. After this, she kisses him softly, and they end up falling asleep in each other's arms. Unfortunately, the next morning, Jiaxin wakes up to a distressing call, informing him that his mother has suffered a massive heart attack. The couple then rushes to the hospital, where Miss Jin has been admitted. They then meet her assistant Le Shang, who reveals that Miss Jin's surgery went well, but she still needs to stay for observation. Later, Zhao and the assistant have a private conversation, and the latter talks about the history of tension between Jiaxin and his mother. After his father passed away, Miss Jin focused heavily on running the company, leaving little time for her son. This caused them to slowly drift apart from one another. Now Le Sheng believes that Zhao is the only person who convinced Jiaxin to step up and take over the company during his mother's recovery. In the hospital room, Miss Jin urges her son to take over as temporary CEO, citing ongoing issues with the Love Note app and financial concerns. Our hero says yes, but wants to have Zhao back in the company. Since his mom likes her as well, she gladly approves of his demand. The next day at Link Tech, Jiaxin calls a meeting to announce his acting position, as decided by his mother. The directors on the board express skepticism about the decision and question Jiaxin's ability to lead such a large company. Our hero responds by saying that his mother makes smart decisions and confidently declares that he's good at what he does. Later, a gorgeous woman named Anna enters the office and approaches Jiaxin. She then hugs him intimately, shocking Zhao and their colleagues. She then introduces herself as the honorary guest and the president of KJ Capital. After this, she disrespects Zhao by asking her to fetch her a coffee. Later, Yanran catches up with Zhao to warn her about Anna. She reveals that this woman used to be her rival in pursuing Jiaxin and that she will go to any lengths to get him. Hearing this, Zhao becomes so jealous that she adds excessive sugar to her coffee. Back at her desk, our heroine imagines romantic scenarios between her boyfriend and Anna, causing her frustration to boil over. When Anna finally leaves, Jiaxin notices Zhao's displeasure and tries to comfort her, but he only makes it worse. He then suggests they sort the matter out over dinner, to which she agrees. However, during dinner, Anna unexpectedly turns up at the restaurant and the tension resurfaces again. Zhao tries to stay polite, but this homewrecker keeps asking Jiaxin about their earlier talk. Our hero then takes her aside for a private discussion, further adding to Zhao's frustration. Later that night, she looks up Anna online and is impressed by her profile. However, while browsing, she stumbles upon messages between Anna and Jiaxin arranging meetings, which leaves her feeling confused and uneasy. She then reaches out to Jingjing for advice. The two friends then meet at her house and discuss various topics over tea. They first discuss Duoshi's long-distance relationship with Ki-hung, who has moved to another city for work. Duoshi now wants to quit her job to be closer to him, but Zhao is strictly against it. After this, she expresses her concerns about Anna. Jingjing advises her not to jump to conclusions and to give her boyfriend a chance to explain. The following day, Zhao becomes suspicious when she notices numerous appointments with Anna on Jiaxin's calendar. Her intuition intensifies when he says that he will be celebrating a friend's birthday that evening, so he'll be home late. Zhao then sees a hotel room booking notification on his phone, terrifying her. That evening, she secretly follows him to the hotel and sees him talking to Anna. She tearfully calls Jingjing, believing that her worst fears are confirmed. The latter then arrives swiftly and tries to calm Zhao, urging her not to act impulsively. Despite the advice, our heroine barges into the hotel room expecting to find something inside. However, much to her embarrassment, she interrupts a birthday party for one of Jiaxin's friends. Jiaxin then explains to her that Anna is staying at the hotel temporarily and that their meeting was just coincidental. He reveals the company's financial trouble due to issues with the Love Nest app and his mother's decision to sell the project. Turns out that Jiaxin was negotiating with Anna's firm to invest rather than sell, but he wanted to finalize everything before telling Zhao. Our poor heroine apologizes for misunderstanding the situation, and Jiaxin reassures her that he is rather happy to know that she cares enough to be jealous. They eventually reconcile and reiterate their love for each other. Just then, Duoshi calls and informs her couple about the rumor that the Love Note app is up for sale. This leaves them guessing if Anna is behind the leak. The following day, the project team discusses the potential sale of their Love Note app. They're greatly concerned about the consequences. However, Zhao shares her plans to update the app, urging the team to work hard to save the project. In the meantime, Jiaxin contacts Anna and asks about the leak, but she denies any involvement. However, she's doubtful about the update plans and threatens to negotiate a buyout with Miss Jin if she isn't satisfied with the app's final version. After the phone call, Zhao arrives at the scene and theorizes that LinkTech has a mole since the leaked information includes details Anna couldn't have known. She later accidentally bumps into Miss Song and finds a business card on the floor. It turns out to be the same media company that linked the news about Jingjing's divorce. As a result, Zhao suspects that Miss Song is the culprit behind all of this. That evening, she and Jiaxin head over to Jingjing's place where they're invited for dinner. While dining, they discuss Love Note's potential buyout, and Jingjing kindly offers to help again. She plans to share her own love story and how she overcame challenges to finally be with her beloved husband. This plan could potentially help to retain their customers for Love Note. Following this, the team works on a proposal to update the app rather than sell it. The proposal emphasizes that if a couple is sincerely in love, they will always overcome challenges. Later, Jiaxin shares the proposal with Anna, and she seems impressed by it. In the meantime, Yanran, who's been doing some digging on her own, also suspects Miss Song and shares her concerns with our main couple. She provides evidence against Miss Song, who contacted Anna in private to try to cut her a deal with LinkTech under the table. Later, Jiaxin and Zhao visit Miss Jin at the hospital. Our hero enthusiastically discusses the app's revision plans with his mother, impressing her. Miss Jin is then reminded of her own relationship with her husband, as they too worked hard to save the company, just like Jiaxin and Zhao are doing currently. She later speaks privately with Zhao, promising not to interfere with their relationship anymore. During another board meeting at LinkTech, Jiaxin announces that the Love Note app will not be sold. He also exposes Miss Song's betrayal and says she will be fired from the company. The bitch retaliates by accusing Zhao of orchestrating her dismissal. But before she can say any more, Miss Jin, now back in good health, arrives. She presents evidence against Miss Song, who is trying to sell the app without anybody's consent and retaining some of the proceeds for herself. Following this, she fires her from the company. Miss Jin then surprises everyone by firing Jiaxin as well. However, she's doing this at Zhao's request, as she wants him to pursue his passion for racing. Later, Zhao surprises Jiaxin by taking him to a racetrack where Alice, his beloved motorbike, has been upgraded. Our hero is thrilled to be back on the track, and they enjoy a joyous ride together. From that moment on, they establish a routine where Zhao goes to work, while Jiaxin practices racing for an upcoming championship. Meanwhile, at Linktree, the team brainstorms ideas to improve Jingjing's public image. Yanran suggests a self-roasting where she will accept her mistake in front of the audience, but also show the good side of the relationship. Jingjing instantly likes the idea, and she even decides to go makeup-free. The scene then cuts to the roast where Jingjing shares her experience of being bullied in school due to her weight. She then goes on to reveal that she got divorced from her husband not because of an affair, but because he wanted to protect her. The audience is touched by her story, and they shower her with grand applause. Meanwhile, back at the racetrack, Joshin is struggling with his performance because he keeps on recalling Kong's accident. He just can't seem to shake the dreadful memory. Upset, he calls Zhao and confides in her about his fears of disappointing his loved ones if he fails. But she reassures him that they'll stand by him as long as he pursues racing. As key dates approach, including the launch of the revised app in Joshin's race, our couple juggles their hectic schedules. Meanwhile, Anna signs a contract with LinkTech to invest in the company. The app's relaunch is coincidentally on the same day when Zhao has to reveal her boyfriend, as she had taken the challenge at the beginning of the show. To make matters more complicated, Joshin's championship race is also on the same day. When the important day finally arrives, Joshin texts Zhou to wish her good luck. Meanwhile, our heroine surprises the team by suggesting a change in venue for the event. At the track, Joshin feels gloomy until he suddenly hears the Love Note team cheering for him. Zhao has brought the entire team to the racetrack to support him and set up a live broadcast during the race. During the broadcast, she reveals her relationship with Joshin, reminding everyone that she won the challenge of finding a boyfriend within 3 months. In the next scene, the much-awaited race finally begins. Despite a few tense moments, including one racer flipping over, Joshin manages to win the race. Following his victory, he's offered the opportunity to participate in a prestigious overseas race, but he doesn't inform Zhao about it. However, later during dinner with his racing buddies, the news eventually slips out. Turns out Joshin would have to go abroad for 6 months to train for the race. Surprisingly, our heroine handles the revelation calmly, as she wants him to pursue his dreams. The following day, Joshin discovers a positive pregnancy test hidden in Zhao's cupboard. Excited, he realizes that he hasn't proposed to her yet. He later visits Kong at the hospital and shares his plans to propose to her. Hearing this, there's a subtle movement in Kong's finger, but Joshin doesn't notice. That evening, he surprises Zhao on the office rooftop with a romantic proposal surrounded by candles, hearts, and flowers. However, she rejects his proposal, leaving him confused and disappointed. When he asks why she did so, Zhao says that she's not ready for it. Moreover, the pregnancy test isn't hers, but Jingjing's. Turns out, Jingjing wanted to surprise her husband, so she hid the test in Zhao's locker. In the next scene, our beloved couple finds himself discussing marriage, children, and family while shopping for baby clothes for Jingjing's upcoming baby. Zhao feels unsure about her skills as a wife and mother and reflects on her parents' troubled marriage. A few weeks later, Joshin's departure day finally arrives, and the couple is devastated. They cry their hearts out while bidding each other farewell. The show then cuts to 6 months later when we are taken to the annual Internet Industry Awards ceremony. The entire Love Note team has gathered, including Zhao, Joshin, who is back from abroad, his mother, Mr. Shu, Ki Hung, Jingjing, and her husband. During the ceremony, Love Note app wins Best App of the Year, and Zhao is called to the stage to receive the award. In her acceptance speech, she expresses gratitude to her colleagues, and especially thanks Joshin, who taught her how to be brave and love freely. Just then, a video montage plays which shows the significant locations Zhao and Joshin visited together. The video ends with her heartfelt marriage proposal to Joshin. Overwhelmed with emotion, our hero tearfully accepts to marry her. They then share a tender moment on stage as golden confetti falls around them. The following day, Joshin is waiting by his bike for Zhao. Soon our heroine arrives at the scene dressed in black jeans and a black leather jacket. To his surprise, she reveals that today he will be sitting on the back while she takes the reins. Turns out, she got her own motorcycle license. Despite his initial reluctance, she persuades him to go along with her plan. The show ends on a happy note as the couple rides through the city together.